I've been doing a crash course in your career on. Jesus Christ, you've been busy. You definitely have a work ethic. I think it's fair to say. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think yes, I do. Yeah, well, same as you.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a. It's not. I'm not saying it's not a normal thing, is it? Is it a working class thing? What is it? But it's just when we're lucky enough to do what we love, you want to keep doing it. And I always say I never act just for the sake of it. It's got to be something that I feel passionate about or interested in.
Yeah.
No. So, but I just feel I've been very lucky, touch wood, to have stuff coming my way that I've wanted to be part of, and get involved in.
If you put that energy out there, though, it attracts people magnetically, and it attracts projects, I think.
Yeah. And there was early on in my career where I did go into rooms and, I remember going for a job that I was only offered a small part in it. I was auditioning for a small part. She went into the room and went, I don't want to play this part. I want to play that part. I mean, when I look back now, I think, I wouldn't do that now. But I felt so strongly. It was a thing set around the miners' strike called Faith for the BBC. And I felt so strongly about it. And I suppose in my naivety, I felt that I had some right to a bigger part because of its political sort of setting. So, yeah, there's been a few times that I've got jobs through being on the front foot and a bit pushy, when they've sort of said, we don't think you're right for this. And I've gone, but I think you're wrong.
So this kind of, I think we can use the word bolshiness.
Yeah.
Is part of something that I've always talked about with the Sheffield thing. It's like just, the Socialist Republic of South Yorkshire and all this stuff. And I think it is imbued in the kind of music that we do, and the lyrics definitely. And do you think it's genuinely seems to be a large part of your kind of USP, I suppose, isn't it? That kind of honesty, northern honesty.
Yeah, I think, it is. But to me, acting is about honesty. I know people say to me, you're a terrible liar. You're an actor, you're such a terrible liar. And it's, well, acting is not about lying. Acting is about honesty and it's about the truth.
Right.
So so for me, that's all linked into. I think that's probably what attracted me to acting. And I think it's sort of a bit of a family trait, actually. I think that could be a bit to the detriment sometimes, that we come from my dad's always say, well, I'm just being honest, when he's literally decimated somebody. And you're like, yeah, but sometimes, Dad, there's a...
The opposite is true in London, I have to say, full of equivocating twats, basically. So
that's what I found when I came to study in London. That's where I found difficult to navigate, that people weren't as honest or as upfront. It seemed, and I remember getting very sort of disorientated and getting criticised. I remember one teacher calling me, and a fabulous teacher called Tessa Worsley at drama school at Adrian said, you'll have to be careful.
Really?
She said, you can't always say what you think in this business. I was like, and I thought, crikey, I thought I was being quite disciplined. So, yeah.
Yeah. I had that sort of problem when I came to London. I can't be bothered reading people's motivations. I mean, I've got better at it as I got older, but it just seemed like too much trouble. I just thought, maybe I should just deal with me as I feel, rather than me trying to adapt. And then I realised that was a very kind of youthful naivety. But there is a certain amount of that in me. And I think, from point of view of music, it reflects in the music we do. It reflects in the work that you do. Yeah. It's almost like a, fuck it, just let's have a go. Kind of.
But it was like watching you the other night at that amazing gig on Sunday at the Albert Hall, and just your connection with the audience. And you can feel the love from the audience, because not only are you amazing musicians, but that you are very open to your audience. You feel you're very inclusive with your audience. It's not a them and us. Some bands you go to and you feel like there's very much we are the band, you are the audience, you know. And
Yeah.
it was like people really can relate. And I sometimes see, look, I think sometimes people see that as I don't know, I get annoyed that it's like as an actor sometimes, that if you're that open, you should be more mysterious or secretive, you know, keep a bit back. And I think, but it's about showing energy and telling stories, isn't it?
Absolutely. The audience the other night, I mean, we've cultivated that over 20 years, to be honest. So it's like a lot of the people who went to that show, I suspect that probably about 80% of them have seen us before anyway. So, but we do a lot of kind of cold calling gigs as well, where we're doing festivals, and they've not come specifically to see us. There's a big bill, and we have quite a good conversion rate. You know, we did a tour with Squeeze before the lockdown, and we got so many people who came to see us as headliners after that. It was a really good thing for us to do, you know. So there's a lesson in that, I think. I just want to, before we go any further, I just want to fill the listeners in on the vast range of stuff that you've been involved in. We'll get onto the music in a bit, which is an added justification for all this. I don't need one. I can do what the fuck I want.
Exactly.
I have to justify it to my audience, I suppose. So Dinnerladies, very, 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 very funny. I mean, very funny. And Victoria Wood, tell me about Victoria Wood.
Well, that was a dream come true for me. I mean, I suppose it wasn't even I was saying, well, dream come true, and I never even imagined I would get to work with her. She was the reason I'm doing what I'm doing when I was young.
Really?
You know, she was the only person that I could see on screen that I thought looks like me, sounds like me. I could possibly, I mean, don't get me wrong, I've not got anywhere near the talent that Victoria Wood.
Oh, come.
But, so yeah, to work with her, I remember I was still at drama school, and I got the call to go in to meet her. And I didn't even think about getting the job. I just thought, I'm just going to go in a room and meet Victoria Wood. I won't get it, but wow, this is going to be something to sit across from her. And then a couple of recalls later, and then I got the job, which was a bit of was a real sort of shock. I don't know. When I think back now, I think naive I was. I went to drama school, but I didn't really have a plan after drama school. I just sort of went, but I want to be an actor. I didn't have this grand scheme of what I was going to do. I just thought I just want to do work I enjoy, but I've not quite figured out how to go about that, which I think sometimes my naivety got me.
But you had an agent, presumably.
Yeah. Well, in the third year, so you're 3 years at drama school, and in the third year you do your shows, and agents and casting directors come, and people were being fought over by agents. I mean, the wonderful Joanna Page was in my year from Gavin and Stacey, and I remember, she'd come in, she'd be like, oh, God, another 7 agents want to sign me. And I'd be sat in the dressing room going, nobody wants to sign me. And everybody was, in corners scribbling away, going, oh, such an agent, this big agent, that big agent. And I just nothing coming for me. And then eventually I got a call from an agency with them, Barry Bennett agency, but they were Bennett Grange, and I think they've changed again now. And they got in touch and said, come in for a meeting. So I met them, and they were just so really lovely to me and complimentary, which I haven't had at drama school. I came from drama school thinking, I'm not very good at this, am I? And they were really lovely and had.
Tell me about RADA.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Oh, I think the drama schools are the tricky places, and it's interesting. I've been listening a lot to sort of Daisy May Cooper from, my brilliant writer performer Daisy May Cooper's in this country, and she talks very openly about her experiences at drama school, and I was quite shocked actually that still it was she's 9 years I think after I was, and I was like, oh, there's still a lot of problems. I think they're being addressed now. I think people have been sort of,
Would you catch it? I mean, I know you're being very diplomatic here.
Yeah.
I'm reading the subtext of what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there things like kind of, I suppose, cruelty and bullying in mental terms?
Yeah. I mean, didn't Anthony Hopkins said something recently that sort of sadly hit the nail on the head about a lot of drama schools, you know, that they sort of these gurus really that people sort of fall for in a way. And it's not, sometimes it's not a healthy scenario. There's a lot of, your training comes from your trauma, and I could never get onto it.
Whoa.
You know what I mean? It's all, yeah. So they'll try and, you know, and I was very stubborn going, I'm not telling you about me. It's none of your business. Yeah. But it's all that, well, you can't be an actor if you don't tap into, and that's not the way I work anyway, and it's never been the way I work, because for me, it doesn't feel like a safe way to work, you know, so, but yeah, but then it was brilliant times there as well. I met the most amazing people. I had a fantastic year. There were some fabulous tutors, don't get me wrong, but some of it was problematic, you know, and especially if you weren't from maybe the backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, or
reading
backgrounds they were from, there was problems. There seemed to be a lot of unrecognition, if you know what I mean, about other people's journeys, apart from if they didn't mirror what the tutors' journeys were. So that, I think, when there's a lot of clashing and typecasting of people, especially.
And you had to learn RP, of course, receive pronunciation.
Yeah. Well, we did that. You know, I got the old, you need to lose the accent, else she won't work. You know, I've got, you need to lay off the chips, else she won't play Juliet. That was one, because I was bigger then. That was one comment the tutor said to me. To which I went, I don't want to play Juliet anyway. She's a wimp. You know, that was my... Who kills himself at 15 for love? Oh, move on. Anyway.
Very good. How much bigger were you then? If you don't mind me.
Oh, God, yeah. I was like 15 stone, so I was a lot.
Shut up.
Well, in the first series of Dinnerladies, so it was big. It was a...
but I mean, you couldn't tell. There was so much stuff going on, but...
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Wow. Yeah. And I think a lot of it is, again, you know, it's how you deal with things, and, you know, and food was a big comfort for me, you know, so, yeah, so it was.
When you moved down to London, because we all have to do that at some point, we did a music thing. I mean, we already had quite a lot of friends in London. Did you have friends in London?
No, I didn't.
Didn't know anyone?
No. So, yeah. I came down and, you know, there was no family, friends or anybody. So I sort of moved down to London and moved in a little house of residence on Goon Street next to Rada. And there was like a handful of us who were sort of more from the regions. There was a couple of people from the north, Liverpool, Manchester, sort of Yorkshire, then friend Vissy, who was from Bristol. And so we all lived. Fred Stephanie, who was from Belgium. There was like a handful of us lived in these little tiny rabbit hut rooms. But we had a great time, you know. But we became the little Rada village, where you sort of go to the Marlborough Arms, Rada, the supermarket across the road, into Leicester Square. We used to go to Camden, me and my friend Vissy, to go and see gigs and go to clubs like the Monarch and the Laurel Tree and all that sort of thing. That's where we used to go down that way. But it became quite insular. It's not really till I sort of left drama school that I moved, sort of London got bigger for me in a way.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you've been brainwashed, because I despise the term the regions.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's pejorative.
Yeah. No, you're right.
And we talked about this the other night, didn't we? That thing I told you about Ian Anderson, the designer, who actually designed and this idea. He did an exhibition based around it called Sheffield, North of Nowhere. You know. TM, which I really liked. And
I've been really thinking about that since you said.
Yeah. So the idea that you are the centre of where you are is just as relevant and important. Not you, I mean one, is just as relevant and important as this magnetic field surrounding London. And it's something I consciously fight all the time, because I've lived in London for 35 years, you know. And yeah. I've never been in love with London, ever. How do you feel about it?
I suppose I'm the same. But I was talking to my partner about this the other day, about loving the city. It was interesting when we were watching Pete Wiley, you know, supporting, and he was talking, I can't remember what song it is, and he talks about the city. And I thought, you know, my favourite cities are Liverpool and Sheffield, and I'm not just saying that. I love them because I think they've got a real sense of it, still of individuality. You feel, very much where you are when you are in those cities. I feel like Leeds and Manchester
are a bit more cosmopolitan, aren't they?
Yeah, and more generic, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of got, could be. And then London, I suppose, but London feels to me like so many little towns in a way. I know it's a city, but I lived there for 12 years and I had to get out. I found it it made me anxious. It was
big.
too much. Yeah, I couldn't, and I felt like I was just getting swallowed into London. I was like, there's things I want to do, and I thought for some reason it was a bit like treacle. I just couldn't get a hold of my own time. I don't know what it was.
I come to the conclusion, because I've just recently moved out of Primrose Hill, which is really nice, to another really nice part of town, which is Marylebone Lane. Right, I mean, like my corner shop is Selfridges. I've changed, and which is really nice and very exciting and everything. But I now realise that I can get about 3 times as much work done, or stuff done, not just work, living in the centre of town. Even like Primrose Hill, which is only like half an hour's walk through Regent's Park from there, you spend so much time travelling in London. And I know it's not always wasted time. You've got your mobile phone, you can listen to things, but it is really because you're distracted. So you just don't get as much done in a place like London.
No, and I used to find it's like you'd come in it was like in the day when you'd have like, they book you in 2 or 3 auditions a day. So you'd come in, I was living in South East London before I moved back north, and I'd come in the morning, go and have an audition or do a voiceover. You'd bump into somebody in Soho, I'd say, do you want to go and have a coffee? So you'd have a coffee, then you bump into somebody else. And then at 12 o'clock, like, should we go and have a glass of wine? Yeah. So you'd go in the phone. And then you'd be like that at 20 it's midnight going, oh my God, the last train, I think, where's my date? 100 quid lighter. And that was a long time ago, you know what I mean?
Are you a member of any clubs in London?
I'm not. Are you?
Yeah. I've been a member of the Groucho for like 30 years.
Yeah.
But, I'm thinking about knocking it in the head, to be honest, because it's kind of changed. It used to be a really interesting place. You used to bump into incredible people. And they've kind of owned at the membership a bit too much now for my time. It sounds a bit elitist. I'm not mean. It's just you want to bump into interesting people.
Well, that's the idea of a membership, isn't it?
It's not just a pub, is it? I could go and sit in a pub all day for one. It's not a problem. Anyway, let's move on to more interesting things. Sorry, I don't know we're going to that. Shameless, Silk, The Village. You played Hamlet?
Yeah.
Fucking hell, that's quite something.
That's how I feel about it. Yeah. That was hard. That was hard. That's one of the hard, physically, not emotionally, but physically, it nearly finished me off playing.
Really?
7 weeks of Hamlet I'd never experienced anything like it. I mean, I was exhausted. I know it sounds dramatic, but I was exhausted by the end of it. And I foolishly sort of went, I'll do 2 matinees a week. What?
Oh my God. Yes.
So, yeah, it was an experience. It was a real experience. And looking back, I feel so blessed to have been able to have done it. And for Sarah Frankham and the Royal Exchange in Manchester to go, we'll trust you to do this. And I think I was the first woman for 30 years before that, in this country. Frances de la Tour had done it in London 30 years previously.
Right.
So,
and you played it as a woman, right? It wasn't like a panto thing.
We played it. So I played a transgender Hamlet. So it was trans woman, trans man. I'm so sorry, trans man. So yes, I was born a woman in a woman's body. Born but wanting to be.
Oh, interesting. So it was set in in contemporary times.
Yeah, we wanted to make something for Manchester that felt for a younger audience as well. That, we weren't interested in sort of making it wasn't for the intellectuals or the Shakespeare sort of aficionados. We wanted to do something that, appealed to where we felt. I mean, it was probably about 8 years ago now.
Right.
You know, and I think now all the gender conversations have moved on hugely since then. I think it was just tapping into something that was becoming a conversation, and it just felt right for me when I started. At first, Sarah said, the director of Frankham, should we, you know, we'll play Hamlet as a female. But the more I started, the more it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel, you know, and this is what sort of came out. I said, this is how I feel Hamlet is, you know, it's, you know.
How did the audience appreciate? I mean, did they, obviously must have done really well, I think.
It was one of the biggest selling shows they'd had, I think, in the history of the Royal Exchange.
Wow.
It extended an extra week, but they said it could have extended, you know, for weeks. Manchester are very generous to me because I'm the audience.
Yeah.
Because I'm local. And I live local, and I think there's still an element of she hasn't gone off to London, although I have to remind him I did go off for a bit and then did come back. I think there's a loyalty there and a support from the audiences, so they will turn out to see you. But I think they got it, and I think lots of youngsters came and engaged in it, and Sarah's brilliant at taking sort of classic text and just putting a bit of a spin on them and making them feel like new. She approaches it like you would a new text. So solve problems that, you know, we chopped a lot of it out because it just goes on and on.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, I hope. Did you do it in a northern accent?
I did. A little bit clearer, but we did. So, you know, because at the end of the day, it's set in Denmark. You know, and everyone just...
You're closer to Denmark with a northern accent, right? So...
It doesn't run. And they say, and they always say, this is what I've heard anyway, that the northern accent is truer to how, you know, the first settlers in this country spoke anyway. It's, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
We're on the right path anyway before we even...
Yeah, don't they say that Shakespeare was like more like a kind of... was close, in that time, was more like a kind of black country kind of act. Yeah, that thing as well. Anyway, moving on. I'm just interested in acting. And, you know, like the usual thing, you do one thing, and it's your career, and that's your life and everything. But actually, you want to be, in my case, I'd love to be a professional food taster, I think. No, but I've always been fascinated with acting. And
well, this thing for me with musicians, to me, musicians are where it's at. Actors are like, you just learn somebody else's lines and do it. You know, musicians, it's like I was saying to you the other night, what I'm obsessed with the fact is you can tell a story in 2-3 minutes. You can tell a story from beginning, middle, and end, engage people, inspire people, or whatever, or entertain in that short time. I need to get, you know, with your keyboard, with the guitar, just sing it, whatever, do where I need to get a whole gang of people together to even contemplate.
Yeah, but you're a writer as well and a director, correct? And a producer.
Yeah.
And that'd be an interesting challenge, wouldn't it? Trying to do what you say happens in pop music well, you do really with the Eccentronic Research Council that you provide vocals for. I mean, it's pretty much that, isn't it, actually, thinking about it? You are encapsulating a mood or perhaps a narrative in some instances into a kind of pop rock electronic thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that it?
But still, that's me just saying, you know, I still feel that in that way in my sort of, you know, day job role as a performer, as an actor, because, you know, Adrian provides lyrics, Adrian and Dean provide the music, and then I just, you know.
You write the words then?
No, I don't write the words. Adrian writes the words. This whole idea was that we were going to co-write, and then Adrian writes at the sort of speed of knots. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so no, I write plays, radio plays and stage plays, but the lyrics I have written lyrics for things with for other projects, a Welsh-speaking band called Nineback. I didn't obviously write it. Things like that, but...
Have you ever wanted to do that?
Yeah. I mean, you know, when I was a teenager, it was sort of, I didn't want to act. So first and foremost, I wanted to be a comedian. Then I wanted to be in a band, but I've got absolutely no musical skill and I'm not a singer.
Oh, no.
And then acting seemed to be, it's awful, I shouldn't say this, but acting always seems to be, for those with the least artistic prowess, can be actors.
I'm not buying that at all. You were in the Wigan ladies rugby team.
I was, yes.
Fantastic. Like, what position?
I was on the wing, so we only had 9 players. That's right. It was so long ago. I was about in mid-teens. Because it was a women's team, it was league, obviously rugby league. So we sort of struggled to get the full sort of quarter of players. So I was quite fat. I've got a short body. When we see, got a very short body, Maxine, but long legs. So there's an issue. So I was quite fast. So, and I did enjoy it, but again, it's one of those things you have to really focus. And I did think, do I want a broken nose if I'm going to be an actor?
It's probably not a good idea, is it?
No. I just thought it was risky, and it was tough. It wasn't tag rugby. It was proper full on, and women, they weren't grudges. I remember we used to have Chaddy was called our trainer used to train St. Pat's team, the sort of feeder team for Wigan men, and he used to say, "God, you're vicious." He said, "Women were not me personally. I was too soft, to be honest." Yeah, women were.
So, did you get any injuries?
I didn't, luckily. No, right. A few roughing ups. You know what I mean? But
they couldn't. They couldn't catch you.
Well, and you get a high tackle. You do a high tackle, not deliberately, but then that was it. You'd get, you get a few digs, and then by the end.
I always think that rugby league is an amazing sport. Honestly, I used to go and watch it when Sheffield Eagles started, actually in Sheffield, and I was amazed at the sheer athleticism of a lot of these were guys, obviously, but I do think there's more physical risk in rugby union.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because they are just monsters, a lot of them. And they can just break you in half, if they choose to. And all that stuff that goes on in the scrum, which you don't get in rugby league, is, my God, that's the dark arts, all right. I mean, they can do anything in there, Anyway, moving on. There was a quote about you that said, I can't remember which performance it was. It was from the Guardian review, and it said, which I really like. It said, the phrase was, "You embodied delicate ferocity."
No, I was whether that was Hamlet.
It might be Hamlet, actually. I didn't write it down, but I just love that idea of the kind of the meniscus. Oh, hello, big word, Jay. The meniscus between the delicacy and the ferocity, and that mysterious bit in the middle is where I think the magic happens.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same in songwriting, actually. Yeah. It's like energy versus delicacy. Major, minor, Cole Porter knew it all, basically.
But it's all about energy, isn't it? It's it's about the energy you give off, the energy, it's like that, it's like because we are, it's storytellers. We are storytellers, aren't we? In whatever form, and that sort of shaman element of it's about passing energy over and gifting that to people with your story,
Oh, we are shaman, aren't we? Oh, we are. You got a scholarship to go to RADA, didn't you?
I did.
You lucky bugger.
Yeah, I got everything. I got my fees and my maintenance paid for. So,
can you imagine that world? Oh my God, what have we come to? Let's get on to politics, because I know there is a certain section of the people who listen to this podcast who contact me and say, "Martin," particularly Americans, actually. I'm not meaning to insult America. I know I've got a lot of listeners there, but it does seem to be the case. I get the occasional people who go, I'm not going to do the accent, but Martin, we know you're a leftist. Please give it a rest, And I'm going, well, it's your option whether you want to listen to this or not. I'm not charging you for it. You have to emotionally invest in listening to it. If you don't like it, you can't just, you can pick and choose which bits you like or skip the bits you don't like. But basically, fuck you, and that's where we're at with that. Politics, right. you started off in the Communist Party. This is good. They're going to love this.
Oh, no, they're good. That's me. I'll never be allowed in America. I did when I was in my late teens. My step-grandfather, who was a massive influence on me, my mum's dad died when she was very young. And then my nan remarried Jim, and we used to call him Jim, and he was in the Communist Party. And he was the biggest influence on me in my life, as he was very political. He wasn't ambitious. He was very, low level. He worked at Leyland Motors. He was in the party. He was the one who encouraged me to read, to educate. But he did his job. There was I didn't want to get in any, sort of level of politics, but it's just something he believed very strongly in. And he sort of passed that on to me. He didn't want to pass it on to me. He was very, he said to me, I don't want you to get involved in politics. And especially when I said I was going to be an actor, he said, for God's sake, don't let people know what your beliefs are. Don't, you're a socialist,
Yeah. I'm really ambivalent about this, to be honest. I used to sell Socialist Worker in the centre of Sheffield when I was growing up. And, the perception of, the kind of hardcore people in that world where they're a bit scruffy and, like the kind of centrist view now in the Labour Party. And they're not moved on. And we go, I'd never buy Socialist Worker, the paper. But I had a kind of grudging respect for them. And I've always been, close to communist. And so I went to America and did the New Music Seminar, which is a big kind of conference in 1981. I was on a panel with Bob Geldof and various other people. And this guy said, because it was the time of Penthouse and Pavement and fascist groove, we don't need that fascist groove thing. And one of the journalists said, Martin, what's your political persuasion? And I said, communist. And the entire room went silent and started hissing. I'm not even joking. It was really disturbing. I went, oh, okay. I was kind of being naughty, but it didn't have it had the impact, but not what I expected, So I completely agree that you shouldn't. You should be careful.
Yeah, and I think, he was just concerned that he wanted me to do. He didn't want me to be an actor in the first place. It was like, why would you do that? People from our background don't do that, and it's a really difficult profession. Although he once said to me, and I'm sure my friends will disagree, he said, you're not selfish enough to be an actor, Maxine. Bless him. Little did he know me. But my answer and that really stuck. And he hated ambition and aspiration. He'd say to me, but you've got to be ambitious and competitive to be an actor. And he had this real, true communist thing about, it's not about competing with other people. It really bothered him, But, yeah.
How do you feel? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about?
Well, I always say to the only person you compete with in this business is yourself. You know what I mean? I'm not competing with anybody else. The job's yours or it isn't yours. You know what I mean? And it depends at what level you want to go to. And I still think you can be successful and still be a decent person and be kind. You know what I mean? Of course you can. But there is. It just depends what you want from it. And I don't want, if I have to push myself to be maybe, out of certain behaviours, I don't want it. I don't want what's behind that door. It just doesn't interest me.
Yeah. Yeah. You're very, I get the impression, but I know you are, you're very morally driven. And that is quite a rare thing in any creative profession. A lot of people, I think, are quite self-centered and or narcissistic, put it bluntly, both in music, acting, film, particularly film acting, and all that stuff. It seems that there's such a primacy put on the way you appear to be that it's almost more in politics as well, actually. that is more important than what's at the core. And in fact, the core disappears. You know,
Yeah. And I think that what we're talking about before, about the being open and accessible, I think as well, sometimes people go, oh, you're not a star. They want you to be a star, don't they? They want you to be, in a weird, perverse way, they actually want you to be an arsehole. They can deal with that better. They're really like, oh, and I think they think you're a bit boring. I can tell people just find me really boring. That, oh, she's so like, people say, oh, what you see is what you get. And I always think, what does that mean? And I find it really insulting. Oh, she's very down to earth. I'm like,
yeah, that is a real backhanded compliment.
What they mean is northern. And I'm like, if I didn't have this accent, if I spoke with a different accent, how would you perceive me? There's a lot of perceptions, you know, obviously on the way people look and the way people say, isn't there? But yeah, I just, and there's times when I think, oh, maybe I do have little, you know, moments where I daydream and think, yeah, if I hadn't have been as open about the things, I probably would have had a different career, or maybe not. Actually, being open about my politics, I think, has put jobs on my lap that maybe I wouldn't have got offered, and actually I'm really grateful for.
Well, like Peterloo, for instance, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote to Mike Lee. I wrote to him. I went, oh,
that's my girl, right there.
Again, but I know Mike. I've known him for years, and I know he's a director. He loves actors, and he will respond to that. He's not. Somebody sent me a brilliant picture of a cinema in America, and it said Peterloo. It said a film by Mike. Oh, it's a Peterloo with no one you know in it, because it's a film by Mike Lee, basically saying, you know, it's Mike Lee's film. You don't need named actors in it, which he doesn't. I mean, a lot of the actors in it who I was speaking to, a lot of them said they'd gone into his, to have a meeting with them and basically said, oh, we've not worked for ages and we think this is it. And then Mike sort of goes, well, come and be in my film. I don't need to tick boxes. I don't need to answer to people going, you have to have such a person who's in that film because that's a big hit, or such a person. So and he just responded to, right, you know, for me and Sally, I still remember, because when I left drama school, I was leaving drama school, I did my showcase with the wonderful Sally Hawkins, and we wrote to him and said, hiya, we're leaving RADA, we really love you, you know, your work. And he got Sally in for a meeting and me. Nothing came of it for me, but Sally then went on to be in quite a few of his films, and, you know, went off to be, and rightly so, a movie star. She's amazing. But, you know, but from that contact, he'd always kept in touch with me, you know. So I wrote to him and said, can I be in it? And if I can't, no problem. And it's great that you're bringing this story to a wider audience. And he wrote back, he's this amazing handwriting, beautiful handwritten letter saying, yeah, of course you can be in it. Let me think and I'll be in touch.
Wow. That takes some front, you know. You're just making it sound completely normal.
Well, you know, Mike's very straight to the point. If he didn't want you in it, he'd just say, nah, nothing for you, thanks. You know, he would say, oh, but the fact that actually I knew that he responds to that.
Yeah, but what's interesting, I think, is that it's because you're not afraid of being rejected, because you know you've got this in the centre, you know you're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
that gives you the opportunity to do that.
At the end of the day, if somebody says no, what's going to happen? You're not going to
die.
I mean, I've got friends who will say, well, and that's how we started out. I'd hear about something and I'd think, I really want to be in that. So I'd get in touch with people, I'd write to people. I'd push my agent and said, please, 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 you know, loads of jobs, Shameless, and even with Sina Weaver when I played Myra Hindley.
Yeah, that was amazing, by the way. Incredible.
Well, they didn't want me in it. They said, oh, no, we don't want Max. She's just done Shameless. She's a comedy face. You know, she's not right. And I just wouldn't let it lie.
I would not let it lie.
But it's sometimes you get, it's not, and I always say to people, it's not because I thought I'm the best person for the job. I never think that. I was just like, I have to do it. I have this compulsion to go, I want to be in that. I want to play that character. I'm not saying I'll be the best, but I just have it's like you can't articulate it. It's like you know.
Yeah, no, you feel compelled to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really fascinating, actually. Yeah. So, and then you played Blanche Dubois in Streetcar Named Desire. That must have been a challenge.
That was actually, you know, in a way, that was more of a challenge than Hamlet. For me, because at drama school, somebody said to me, you'll never play Tennessee Williams. You're far too grounded. They said, it was supposed that, there's a lightness in his characters and blah, blah, blah. And there's so much nonsense comes out of people's mouths at drama school students who then maybe they don't even realise that they're just throwing these pearls out, but they stick. And it's always the criticisms that bury
I know.
of hang around. So
oh, you're frozen. Oh no. Oh dear. Oh dear. Oh, sorry, we're back. We're back.
I don't
Sorry about that.
No. I've moved. I'm sat on the floor now. Just see. I'm literally sat on the.
It might be my end. It's a bit. Oh, anyway, you don't need to. My turn. Yes, carry on. Sorry, you were talking about a streetcar named Desire, and
yeah. Anyway,
you have to do it in a Southern American accent.
I had to do it in a Southern accent, and I'd never thought I was a Blanche. I thought if I was anybody, I'd be a Stella. And again, Sir Frankum said, "I want to do this play, and I want you to play Blanche." And for the first 2 weeks, I just felt sick because I thought I can't. I felt like I was doing a really bad Kim Cattrall impression. And then it sort of clicked, and I loved it. And I think that's the best time. I've had some, I think, brilliant times for me. I'm not saying I was a brilliant performer, but the stage is where you're at home. That's where I get on and I go, yeah, whatever. Even if I'm crippled with nerves, it just feels safe. But for me, I loved that part. I loved the cast, Sharon Duncan Brewster, Ben Batt, Yusuf Concord. They were just amazing. Sharon's now in the big new June movie.
Right, yeah. Have you seen it?
I have. It's brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, it's good actually.
I love the costumes and the design. I love the original. I think the original's a little.
I think the original was destroyed by editing it down by an hour, basically.
Yeah.
Because the final part of it made very little sense. It was just like an action movie. Whereas all the set pieces, the Baron Harkonnen floating around a room with swords on his face, it was fucking brilliant. And all that stuff. Sting wasn't so good, though. I think I was a bit rubbish. But I'm not a big Sting fan, to be honest.
But so yeah, that was one of those where I ticked off. I went, I can't believe somebody gave me the opportunity to play Hamlet. But again, you only get better as an artist by being pushed. And I just feel I've been in a very fortunate position that I've worked with collaborators who pushed me to do, you know what I mean? Who pushed me out of my comfort zone. So that's how I learn as an actor.
That's really, and I say this to, I teach MA students songwriting and production and stuff. And I say to them, look, it's no good. You may have come from middle-class backgrounds. You may have been supported all your life with a loving family. We're not here to make you feel comfortable.
Yeah. We're
here to challenge you because that's the only way that you'll grow. And I think there's a lesson in that for everybody, to be honest. Where are we now? So, the Nico project, tell us about that.
Yeah, well, that was with Sir again. So Sir Frankum. So years ago, maybe 10 years ago, we did a production I recited The Mask of Anarchy, Shelley's The Mask of Anarchy at the Albert Hall where you played the other night when it was just literally been reopened. It was still in quite a shabby, they haven't zhuzhed it up. As I was very honoured to visit your dressing room the other night and when I got very mad.
It sounds a little bit strange to the listeners.
Yeah, no, it sounded very
like we weren't alone.
People in there. And so we done this Mask of Anarchy, and it was a big hit. I think it's because it's about Peterloo, basically. Peterloo Mask just across the road where the Free Trade Hall used to be. It's now a hotel, blah, 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 blah. And it went down really well at Manchester International Festival. So then they sort of gave us, they've been brilliant, the festival of sort of saying to me and Sarah, what do you want to do next? So after that, we did a Scriker, Carol Churchill play that's very abstract and brilliant, but we did that. And then they said, what do you want to do next? And I'd always got a fascination with Nico. And I feel her story had slightly been wrestled off her by the men in her life or the men she'd come into contact with. So me and Sarah sort of sat down and went, how do we try some way to sort of wrestle it back? And I know she's a complex woman and sometimes can seem a very unlikable woman and blah, blah, blah. But I just, you know, I'm fascinated by her artistry. I'm fascinated where she came from, where she got to, and her sort of a musicianship. I think she's extraordinary. And